Joint US and Israeli strikes reportedly hit residential areas in Iran as an IDF ground and aerial campaign ramps up in Lebanon. We report from both hotspots as the conflict enters day 7. With the war putting the squeeze on global oil supplies, Washington hands New Delhi a 30-day window to keep buying Russian crude. A face-saving exercise or India's sovereignty recognized? We look at all the buzz around a possible energy crisis ahead. Also, is youth about to spring eternal in Nepal? Rapper-turned-politician Balendra Shah is the clear front-runner in the first election since a Gen Z-led uprising last year. We are tracking the vote count throughout the day. And the battle to protect our next generation from the dark side of social media. The Indian state of Karnataka becomes the first in the country to ban platforms for under 16s. We discuss the pros and cons. Hello and welcome. You're watching RT India. I'm Osama Shab, live from New Delhi. Our top story remains the ever-evolving situation in West Asia. The war against Iran, launched by the US and Israel, it has entered its 7th day with missiles and drones continuing to fly across West Asia. This is the footage from Lorestan province in western Iran, close to the border with Iraq. Residents, they were seen scrambling for safety moments after a missile attack. Local media claim the strike hit residential areas with 6 people wounded. Multiple other attacks have been reported, including in the capital. And from homes to institutions, Iran's foreign ministry has shared a video claiming to show an elementary school hit during a strike on the capital. It comes mere days after another missile hit an all-girls school in the city of Minab, leaving some 165 people dead, many of them children. Reports are mounting of civilian areas being caught in the crosshairs of US and Israeli operations. A bureau chief in Tehran, he reports from a damaged sports complex. Take a look.
We are currently in front of Azadi Stadium. What you see behind me has been destroyed. It's a 12,000-seat arena, a place that previously hosted numerous major sporting events. Many Iranians have fond memories of this place. Now it's completely destroyed. Information about casualties and the extent of the damage is not yet available. We are waiting to see whether we'll be allowed to go inside.
Iran has been responding with a rocket wave of its own. Local media have released footage of missiles reportedly being launched towards Israel. The Shia group Hezbollah is warning of a response too, as it called for areas near the Lebanon-Israel border to evacuate. RT's Charlotte Dubensky has the latest.
Here in the north, the very north of Israel, we have seen army equipment continue to pass us as it's heading towards the border with Lebanon. It's just a kilometre away from where I'm standing. There have been D9 bulldozers, generators, communication vehicles, refueling vehicles, even Merkava tanks. There are now checkpoints that have been set up as you travel near the border. Some roads even closed. Hezbollah rockets being fired from across from Lebanon. And while most are now being intercepted by, it appears to be the use of new Israeli laser technology, on occasions there are some rockets that are managing to get through, such as this one, which hit a hotel in Kfar Yuval. In 2023, many of the communities in the north of Israel were evacuated. This was as Hezbollah and Israel were engaged in a war. Now, while there had been a ceasefire in place since the end of 2024, many people chose simply not to return back. There were better opportunities, some say elsewhere in Israel, others say it just wasn't safe enough to come back. And now the IDF says that there's going to be no evacuation of citizens. Locals say it's a decision they agree with.
We are keeping an army, financing an army. There is a name, Israel Defense Forces. His job is to protect me. Usually they do that. The army is a muscle, he do what the government said. That was a huge mistake to evacuate the people from here. The source, they were supposed to be evacuated after what they hit him with.
Sirens have been filling the air here on a regular basis. We have heard Israeli interceptors taking down those rockets being fired from Hezbollah. We can even sometimes hear what appears to be the Israeli operation just across the border, blasts roaring through the air. This simply is normality for people here, they say.
It's not fun living in a war with sirens and rockets and everything, but it's something I'm pretty used to. Because of the previous war, people aren't really shocked or frightened anymore. They already know how to deal with it.
Hezbollah causes a lot of problems. Because it fires from a close range, the rockets arrive very quickly. And besides that, it's dangerous. A rocket is a rocket. We don't really have time to hide or escape.
The overarching opinion of the people that I've been speaking to on the camera and off the camera is that the IDF has their full support when it comes to the latest operations that have been launched and taking place now in the south of Lebanon. What people want, they say, is for once and for all for Hezbollah to be completely obliterated. Charlotte Dubensky for RT in Kiryat Shmona in North Israel.
After triggering a conflict that has dragged in all of West Asia and sent shockwaves through global markets, the US, it is apparently attempting some damage control. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has announced a 30-day waiver for India to buy Russian crude again.
To enable oil to keep flowing into the global market, the Treasury Department is issuing a temporary 30-day waiver to allow Indian refiners to purchase Russian oil. This deliberately short-term measure will not provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government as it only authorizes transactions involving oil already stranded at sea. India is an essential partner of the United States, and we fully anticipate that New Delhi will ramp up purchases of U.S. oil. This stopgap measure will alleviate pressure caused by Iran's attempt to take global energy hostage.
Let's take a look at how some countries they are sitting right now in terms of crude reserves, starting with Japan. Japan has enough for around 250 days, while China, it has about half that in terms of time. In the European Union, it has a buffer of about 4 months on average. However, Belgium, Hungary and Slovakia, they have some of the lowest or near zero reserves. The US, it is in a similar position to Europe, strengthened by its acquisition of Venezuelan crude. India, well, India currently holds about 74 days of oil cover, while Australia, it is literally a matter of weeks away from running out. Now, for India, Russia has been an extremely reliable source in the recent years, and right now, it has tankers at sea across the globe, providing an option to keep imports flowing. Around 130 million barrels of Russian oil, they are currently being held at sea. Nearly 27 million of those, they are in the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean. Another 20 million barrels, they are moving near the Red Sea and Suez Canal. 7.5 million others, they are stationed around Singapore. Now, the government sources told news agency ANI that India has steadily increased crude purchases from Russia since 2022. In February 2025 alone, New Delhi sourced 20% of its total crude imports from Russia, averaging at over 1 million barrels per day. In fact, New Delhi maintains its energy choices. They are driven by national interest, and reports suggest India would have turned to Russia again regardless of the waiver.
We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia.
They bought Russian oil because we wanted somebody to buy Russian oil at a price cap. That was not a violation or anything. It was actually the design of the policy, because as a commodity, we didn't want oil prices going up, and they fulfilled that.
Washington's latest move follows a familiar pattern. After deepening the energy crisis with its war on Iran, it is now trying to manage the flow of oil. The war in the Middle East has hit global oil and gas supplies, impacting Europe and India. Even America is affected by it, but the US president, he says that he can't be distracted by rising prices impacting consumers. This is what he told Reuters in his latest interview. Take a look.
I don't have any concern about it. They'll drop very rapidly when this is over, and if they rise, they rise. But this is far more important than having gasoline prices go up a little bit.
Europe, too, is facing the brunt of the war in the Middle East. Supplies of gas from Qatar have stopped, and now President Putin has threatened to block supplies to Europe from Russia as well, lending greater urgency to the matter from Brussels. America's decision to allow oil marketing companies in India to buy Russian oil is therefore being seen in Delhi against this context. India, after all, has been a crucial supplier of refined petroleum products to Europe. The message is not lost on either India or its allies. Like in the past, India's decision to purchase Russian oil will likely continue to be dictated by national interest.
It's not in their sovereign right to decide on the sovereign decision of either India or Iran or Venezuela or United Arab Emirates of what they should do in any of the areas, be it energy or others.
The experience shows when it comes to the national security of India, India follows its own way without any fear of external restrictions.
As energy pressures mount worldwide, Russian supplies increasingly appear to be a crucial option for India. Take a look.
More to come as the world recognizes Russia as a must-have supplier of energy.
India is looking back to increase the supplies of energy resources from Russia. So this is obviously the case when we keep always our options open on the table.
Washington has made it clear that it keeps its own interest in mind in every decision it takes. Take a look, for instance, at this remark by U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau.
India should understand that we're not going to make the same mistakes with India that we made with China 20 years ago. And then, the next thing we know, you're beating us in a lot of commercial things. We're going to make sure that whatever we do, it's fair to our people.
So first things first, just as US is prioritizing its own national interest, India will continue to prioritize its own. India is likely to look for oil that suits its market going forward, Russia and otherwise.
And earlier we spoke to the former chairman of the Indian Oil Corporation, who said returning to Russian oil ticks all the boxes for India in terms of uninterrupted energy. Take a look.
Markets are tight and supply routes are under stress. The priority of every country, including the US, is to keep the oil flowing and avoid panic in prices. Allowing Indian companies to lift certain Russian cargoes is essentially a technical, time-bound step to keep existing barrels moving. For India, it supports our core objective, uninterrupted, affordable energy for our people. The Russian barrels, if they disappear, there'll be huge volatility in the oil market, which nobody wants. So I think that Russian barrels are very key to maintain the price stability, and the volatility has to be reduced. So Russian barrels are certainly there on the radar. The recent US move is an acknowledgement that India has to act in line with its own energy needs. With 1.4 billion people, growing mobility and industrialization, we cannot afford sudden disruptions in supply. Indian refiners have already diversified their baskets and will always choose the most secure and the economical options within the rules in force. The waiver simply creates clarity around some specific cargoes, which is good for orderly markets and for Indian consumers. If oil already on the water gets stuck for legal or logistical reasons, the effective supply shrinks and the prices spike for everyone. By letting these barrels reach refiners, some of that pressure is eased and volatility is reduced. For India, anything that stabilizes global prices directly supports domestic fuel affordability and macroeconomic stability. So we are large importers, so any disruption in the Gulf is a concern. But over the years, due to diversified suppliers, and strengthening our refining and logistics systems. Today, between the refinery inventories, marketing stocks, and strategic reserves, India has roughly 25 days of crude and 25 days of product coverage, which gives about 74 days, as you showed in your presentation.
Yeah.
So the key is to use the buffer wisely to ensure smooth and avoid any shocks for the consumers. Today, the world, before this war started, we were in an oversupplied situation. That's why the prices were calm for nearly 1.5 years.
Yeah.
So there is enough oil in the market. We have to only look out for sources which don't use the Strait of Hormuz. And there are many such sources. And we have to tap those sources. There should be government-to-government understanding. Maybe the freight rates will be a bit higher, but then we have to go for additional inputs to the country from any source that we have other than the Strait of Hormuz route.
Well, the special representative of Iran's late supreme leader, he has spoken exclusively to RT India. Abdul Majid Hakim Ilahi told us that colonialism is being pushed in the 21st century by America and Israel. Take a listen.
How do you react to the US statement saying that they would kill any other Ayatollah?
During the colonial era, the colonized countries' people believed that the European countries have right to kill them, had right to occupy them, have right to take their mines, have right to take their wealth, had right to do whatever they want to do. Because of that, maybe 2,000, 3,000 European soldiers occupied the people of one country. And they were thinking like that. Now also, I think the same concept exists in this era, and they think that United States of America and Israel have right to do whatever they want to do. They have right to kill anyone. They have right to hijack any president. They have right to attack any neighbors. They have right to have more than 450 nuclear weapons. They have right to do whatever missiles they want to have it. And the other countries, they should obey them, and they should be under their authority.
Washington's commander-in-chief has claimed the U.S. military is effectively wiping out Iranian forces at sea. Donald Trump said 24 vessels had been destroyed in just 3 days, with fresh footage released showing some of those strikes.
U.S. forces aren't holding back on the mission to sink the entire Iranian Navy. Today, an Iranian drone carrier, roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier, was struck and is now on fire.
It comes after the U.S. sunk an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. The vessel had been attending drills as a guest of New Delhi when it was hit with a torpedo. The Indian Navy confirmed it received a distress call and sent a training ship immediately to assist. Sri Lanka also released video showing its personnel rescuing 32 Iranians who were hospitalized. Dozens of others, they were killed in the U.S. submarine attack. Local journalist Lahiru Fernando reports from where the survivors are being treated.
We have been reporting about this incident where an Iranian naval ship was attacked in the Indian Ocean, and the sailors those who were rescued the boat back to the land, and also the State Police were recovered and gave a boat back to the southern city of Gold or Sri Lanka. So you can see the hospital, that's Paul National Hospital. It's right behind me. I'm at the location now. This is the place, this is the hospital where the dead bodies are kept, and also the rescued sailors are being treated.
Well, Sri Lanka has now evacuated a second Iranian vessel. Colombo has allowed the warship with more than 200 crew members to dock at a northeastern port. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake said the decision was taken purely on humanitarian grounds.
There is a real risk of a severe global economic crisis, and entire societies are facing serious and complex challenges. We call upon all parties to demonstrate a firm commitment to peace. As a state, Sri Lanka stands ready to support every step toward ending hostilities. All our actions are aimed at saving lives and ensuring that humanity prevails.
A rapper turned politician is the front runner to become Nepal's next leader. With vote counting still ongoing, the Rashtriya Swatantra Party candidate Balendra Shah is the clear leader. In the capital, Kathmandu, crowds are already celebrating and supporting their chosen candidates, despite the ballots still being tallied up. The elections, it has largely been seen as a three-way contest, but Balendra Shah, he was popular among younger voters in the run-up to the elections. Before the polls, the country's youth vented their frustrations with the establishment and alleged corruption. And let us go live to RT's Vinayak Dikshit, who is in Nepal for us. Vinayak, how's the atmosphere there?
Right. So the counting of votes polled in Nepal's first general elections ever since last year's Gen Z protests is underway, and latest trends indicate a huge political shift in the Himalayan region, in the Himalayan nation. The youth-backed Rashtriya Swatantra Party, led by Ravi Lamet Chhane and Prime Ministerial candidate Balendra Shah, who's also seen as the face and the voice of the Gen Z, their party is leading in most of the constituencies. Both the Nepali Congress as well as the CPN-UML are trailing in said constituencies. An indication of this popular mood came earlier today when the RSP wrested the Kathmandu 1 seat, which traditionally used to go to the Nepali Congress and the Communists in the past. The ballot papers from the majority of the remote polling stations in the country are on their way to their respective counting centers, and a final result can be expected sometime next week. Meanwhile, celebrations have already begun in the RSP camps. As per latest updates, the RSP is leading in 101 seats out of the 165 directly representative seats. We spoke to some of the enthusiastic voters and supporters of the party as well.
Gen Z isn't demanding much. We want the end of corruption. The social media ban in Nepal was also a wrong decision. Going forward, we hope to see the end of corruption, and may the nation prosper.
We are very glad and happy because what we have fought for, we are getting it. We are in the lane of it. It's only the initial phase of it. We are not at the destiny. We are just going to make a path to lead a better country and live in a better country. That's our motto and goal.
We all feel very, very much pleasureful, very wonderful, very great. We are very much happy to hear this result.
Nepal has historically balanced its ties with both Beijing and New Delhi in the past, so it goes without saying that the political outcome of these elections is not just going to be vital for the political future of Nepal, but for the geopolitics in the region as well. Right now, all eyes are on the rapper-turned-politician Balendra Shah and which direction he will take the Nepali people if he becomes the Prime Minister next. It also remains to be seen what role will political heavyweights like ex-Prime Ministers KP Sharma Oli and Pushpa Kamal Dahal will play in the future of Nepal.
All right, Vinayak Dikshit, thank you very much for getting us all those details. India's southern state of Karnataka has become the first in the country to ban social media for children under the age of 16. This announcement was made by the state's chief minister himself.
Social media will be banned for children under the age of 16 to prevent the adverse effects of increasing mobile usage. The ban is aimed at preventing the negative impact on children caused by increasing mobile phone usage.
And we can get some insight now from N.S. Napinai, who's the founder of Cyber Sathi, an initiative focusing on cyber safety on digital spaces. She's also a senior advocate in the Indian Supreme Court. Ma'am, thank you very much for speaking with RT India. First of all, from a legal point of view, can a state government legally ban social media for these children, or does that fall under the centre's jurisdiction? And secondly, how enforceable is a ban like this?
So I think you've hit the nail on the head. I did not expect the legal question first. I thought you'll go into the social causes. So yes, indeed, cyber as well as technology aspects come under the union list. So if you look at it from the perspective of criminal law, it would go under the concurrent list. if you look at it in the context of health and welfare of the state subjects, then one could possibly claim that it could be force-fit into the state list. So the issue in terms of constitutionality is likely to be the first that will be raised if any of the states that have been speaking about a social media ban raises this issue. The second aspect is in terms of the practicalities in terms of enforcing the ban only within a state as opposed to the entire nation. Ideally, this should come from the center, and as part of the center's intermediary guidelines or its Information Technology Act, it would be better for states to submit a kind of, a report or a request and look at a center-state collaboration or cooperation. But then having said that, if each state wishes to do something, I'm sure they will not bring it simpliciter under a technology or a cyber process. They may try to bring it under one of the subcategories.
Ma'am, could this ban be challenged as a violation of the right to free speech under Article 19?
Not necessarily, because, if you look at the free speech provision in India, it's a layered provision, and you can have certain reasonable restrictions with the emphasis on reasonable, provided you're able to show, one, that it is a parliament or an assembly enacted law, two, that there is a legitimate state aim that balances that requirement, and three, that it is proportionate. So you will have to show that a ban and nothing else will work. And to a large extent, the fact that other countries have already taken the drastic step of a ban will lend support to the reasonable restriction argument.
Ma'am, is banning social media for under 16s, do you think it is an effective way to protect children online?
We needed to evaluate regulation of social media a long time back. The genie is now out of the bottle.
Yeah. So and is it out of control as well?
It is certainly out of control. So if you ask me, should it be regulated? 100% it should be regulated. For instance, now the UN has also red flagged the need to criminalize social grooming, for instance, right? So we definitely need to look at social media and its harms in multiple ways. But is ban the solution or age gating the solution? I think that's where the nuancing lies. And I think it's also time for tech companies to evaluate what is it that they want to offer underage children, and should there be separate platforms or separate products that they should be evaluating, because one size may not fit all going forward.
Ma'am, who's going to be verifying the age of these users? Would the platforms be able to reliably verify the age of users in India?
Now, if you look at the global processes that they have been following, parental consent is one of the aspects. Even if you look at India's Personal Data Protection Act, DPDP Act, it provides for this parental consent process in terms of child data as one aspect. Okay, but when you look at parental consent guardrails, often it is violated by children themselves because they are the masters of technology. So it is not that easy, or it's not that difficult, I would say, for them to circumvent these kind of processes. The second level then becomes technology-enabled processes, and that may include some level of surveillance in terms of our social media platforms. So where do we draw the line in terms of guardrails as opposed to even corporate surveillance is something that we should evaluate very carefully.
I mean, it also, there is also this argument that many of the people who are going to be regulating the social media platforms for their children, they themselves are not digitally educated to handle all of that. So this is a catch-22 situation in itself, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's why Meta's argument may not really hold water, that this is a responsibility that should lie only with the parents, because parents themselves have demoted their authority when it comes to technology to their children or the younger generation. So it is the younger generation, in fact, which guides the adults in the household in terms of the usage of technology. So to then say that the persons who are the seniors or adults have to take responsibility of a medium which they themselves do not understand, may be really placing the risk in the wrong hands. And in any event, neither can government nor social media platforms can avoid the responsibility that lies primarily with them by saying it is for parents to figure out. That is no way to approach safety online.
Ma'am, is there also a risk that, this strict age checks, they could end up creating new privacy and data protection concerns, in the larger context? Do you think that is also a possibility?
Both sides can create these issues. So if you permit children, then how are social media platforms going to delineate adult and child data after the DPDP Act becomes effective? It's still a while away, but May 2027 is still around the corner. So after that, even the social media platforms will find it difficult in terms of regulating it, in terms of delineation. As far as the child data is concerned, that it stands on a different footing, including under the DPDP Act, and that it needs better protection is definitely a criticality. How we approach it, and do we want to go the ban way or only as age gating, and is age gating really going to be feasible through technology enabled means, is something that platforms really need to address and address quickly if they don't want to lose their customers.
Ma'am, in a world where technology skills are so essential, especially in this day and age, could this particular move affect the young people's digital literacy also?
Digital literacy does not really need social media, because often, we confuse the internet with digital social media, right? You still have access to the internet. You still have so many other tools for your digital literacy. So social media may not necessarily be top of the charts on that. Entertainment, maybe, yes, you may lose. Connectivity in terms of staying connected with friends, family, etc., yes, you do lose that. But there is a lot of distraction. There is a lot of other issues that go with social media platforms, and we definitely need to address that specifically in the context of children. Without doing that, to merely pose it as a digital literacy issue, I think is pitching it too high.
Ma'am, if the end goal is all about child safety, which should be, are there better policy tools than an outright ban?
Certainly. So age gating is something that we've been speaking about, and age gating necessarily means that you permit certain nuanced and limited kind of access, and that limitation either comes through law or platforms and to some extent parental controls. But to merely pose it only as a parental control aspect would be very wrong. Every time some issue or concern has happened on social media, the platforms have modified their policy documents to reflect better protective mechanisms. The classic example is of metaverse and 3D enabled processes where abuse was prevented through changes in the policy and also in the visual impact of a medium. So it is not like platforms do not have the technology capabilities or the ability to protect better. They should have better inclination and understand that it is now time for them to implement them with better rigor.
All right. The big question still remains. Could this particular move set a precedent for other states to impose similar restrictions? Well, we'll have to wait and watch. N.S. Napinai, thank you very much for speaking with RT India.
Thank you.
And Sri Lanka's Prime Minister has spoken exclusively to our show India, Russia and the World. Harani Amarasuriya shared her views on energy sovereignty, diplomacy and much more with our head of news, Runjhun Sharma. You can watch it in full right here on RT India. Up next.